They called her the diamond of the empire, forged in the furnaces of genetic perfection, precision-trained, armor-gilded, and battle-hardened. Her expression never shifted. She showed no weakness, no fear. Her voice alone had silenced insubordinate admirals. Her combat record untouched. Her loyalty presumed absolute. And yet, without permission, without explanation, she boarded a stealth-class cruiser and vanished into the void beyond the inner rings. The order she left behind was cryptic: "I seek the last human." The Empire's command center paused. Not in confusion, but in collective discomfort. The word human hadn't been uttered in that form for over 5 centuries. It was an extinct designation classified as theoretical, dangerous. Myths wrapped in data fragments. Ancient accounts spoke of a species that burned brighter, died faster, and left a scar across time itself. And yet no empire, no warlord, no scholar ever confirmed their existence beyond remnants, ruins, and warnings etched into abandoned planetary cores. She flew in silence through restricted space. No crew. No AI. Just one encrypted file, opened only once, the moment she crossed into Black Zone territory. It displayed coordinates, uncharted, floating in a sector marked as uninhabitable. What should have been lifeless was pulsing with faint signatures. Beneath it all, one frequency hummed in low, almost indecipherable tones: human standard Earth English. She didn't speak it, but she felt it. Each syllable buried itself deep into her neural pathways like a melody remembered from a dream she'd never had. As she approached the sector, old warnings flashed, ancient distress signals from forgotten fleets, garbled communications begging not for help but for erasure. Ships had come here before. None had returned. She arrived at a moon drifting in silence. It wasn't marked on any galactic survey. Its orbit wobbled, broken, and off-sync. But deep below its surface, energy signatures flared to life as her ship entered the atmosphere. Lights activated in buried stations, doors opened before her hand reached them. Systems older than her empire responded to her presence as if they recognized her. As if they had been waiting. The moment her armored boots touched the platform, she felt something bleed into her chest, a weight familiar and foreign. Like being expected. She scanned the environment. No signs of life. And yet, her pulse accelerated. Not from fear, but anticipation. A shape moved in the distance. A humanoid. No environmental suit, no armor, just silence. And then he spoke. "You're late." She didn't answer. Her voice failed her for the first time in her life. The man, if he was a man, tilted his head slightly. His eyes weren't glowing or menacing. But they weren't natural either. They held history. The kind no species should bear alone. "Do you remember me?" he asked. She said no. But she didn't mean it. Her body was reacting. Her mind rejecting what her instincts confirmed. She knew this man, though she had never seen him before. He walked beside her as if it were rehearsed. The facility unlocked chamber by chamber, revealing corridors untouched for millennia, yet cleaner than any imperial lab. Symbols appeared on walls, not hers, but they responded to her. Doors scanned her DNA, accepted her silently. The human didn't guide her. He just walked like he belonged, and she followed like she'd always meant to. He didn't offer answers. Not immediately. Instead, he asked questions. "What's your earliest memory? What dreams recur? What name do you hear before waking?" She lied on all counts. He smiled gently. Not condescending, not cruel. Just like someone who already knew the truth and was letting her try anyway. In one chamber, a projection bloomed. The galaxy as mapped by the Empire. He made one gesture, and the map shifted, revealing overlays, hidden pathways, zones the Empire had no idea existed. "This is what you've been allowed to see," he said. "This is what you've been trained to protect." She asked what lay beyond. He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled up data, images of wars, ancient and furious, human fleets, unrecorded by any official history, raising entire star nations in retaliation for violations no alien species could remember committing. There were no treaties, no negotiations, just vengeance delivered with ruthless, surgical precision. "You're one of us," he said. She recoiled. He clarified, "Not human. Not fully. But altered, seeded, designed to carry echoes." Her genetic code was too perfect, too precise. Not an evolution of her species, but an insertion. Her mind had memories locked away, sealed until her proximity to human code could begin unlocking them. The Empire hadn't made her. They had simply raised her. She demanded to know why. He said it wasn't her decision to make, not yet. But she was here now. That was all that mattered. As she began to recall visions, flashes of earth, of skies torn by light, of children walking through fire and never flinching, he led her deeper. Each step triggered another memory, another instinct. She started finishing his sentences. She knew the layout of rooms she had never entered. She activated systems with a gesture she didn't remember learning. The facility recognized her not as a guest, but as a key. He finally offered his name, Elias. She ran a deep scan. No record. But a ghost signal emerged. Military ID, old, buried in pre-Empire databases. Project designation, Last Shepherd. She asked why he waited here, alone. He said he wasn't alone. Not really. And not waiting. Preparing. There were thousands of facilities like this one. Buried. Silent. Watching. Each bound to a signal. A bloodline. A memory strand. Each with a purpose. She wasn't the only one designed to find them. But she might be the first to awaken. The Empire, he said, was a temporary measure. A test. To see if any species could carry responsibility. To see if anyone deserved the truth. They hadn't passed. Not yet. She asked what he expected of her. He asked what she believed in. She hesitated. He told her that humans don't offer answers. They offer choices. She remembered her oath. Her training. The Empire's anthem burned into her mind since birth. And yet, none of it carried the same weight as this man's silence. He didn't command her. He didn't plead. He let her choose. The moment she did, the world responded. Systems activated across the moon. A signal pulsed outward, ancient and sharp. A recall beacon. Not to the Empire, but to remnants, scattered seeds, other humans, or what remained of them. She knew the Empire would detect it. They would come. And when they did, they would try to kill her. Again. He didn't flinch. "They've tried before," he said. She asked if he planned to fight. He looked at her. Not cold. Not distant. Just real. "I don't need to fight. I just need you to remember." Something cracked inside her. Not pain. Not resistance. But pressure releasing. Her voice, when it returned, wasn't hers. It was older. Deeper. A cadence from a world buried in myth. She spoke a name. Not his. Hers. Her real one. The one only she and the systems beneath this moon knew. The stars shifted. And the galaxy took a breath it didn't know it was holding. She didn't sleep after the signal was sent. The walls of the moon base shifted, adapting to her presence, revealing levels not visible before. She was no longer reacting to the facility, it was reacting to her decisions. Rooms lit before she stepped into them. Doors opened not because she approached, but because they expected her to. Elias walked beside her silently, letting the moments stretch. She had questions, but the answers wouldn't matter unless she remembered on her own. That was the purpose. He introduced her to the core, a room of impossible architecture, suspended in a gravity field that obeyed no laws her people understood. A central platform hovered in stillness above a map, not just of the Empire, but of everything beyond it. Hidden sectors, shadow zones, blacklisted coordinate. Red-marked locations blinked in sequence. Elias pointed at them. Sleeping giants, he said. Each was a remnant of the first network. Human vaults sealed after the Exodus. Some were weapons. Others were libraries. A few were ciphers containing knowledge dangerous enough to destabilize entire sectors. Only those with seeded memory signatures could access them. She was one of them, and now she knew it wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. She asked him why her species was chosen. They weren't, Elias replied. You were. Her life, her body, her role, it had been curated. From the moment she was conceived, her genome had markers no other of her kind carried. The Empire never questioned it. She excelled. She outperformed. She dominated war colleges, passed command simulations on her first trials, and never failed in combat. They assumed she was simply exceptional. They never realized she had been designed to be. Not by them, but by the ones who left first. The Empire didn't create her. They inherited her. Elias accessed a panel and showed her archived footage. Not propaganda, not simulation, but raw history. Earth. Old Earth. Cities with metal spires reaching into clouds. Oceans dark and stormy. Entire continents pulsing with life and movement. Human populations stretching into the billions. No empire in the current galaxy could rival it. Then came war. Not invasion, response. A fleet of unknown origin attacked Earth's moons. No species ever claimed responsibility. The retaliation was absolute. Human countermeasures were not proportional. They were surgical. Systems that supported entire alien civilizations were shut down at the neural level. Quantum thought loops collapse. Biocomputational command centers deactivated simultaneously. No negotiation. No peace talks. Just immediate correction. But it wasn't genocide. Not extinction. Just removal. And then silence. Humans vanished. No mass grave. No final transmission. Just evacuation. Every record ended the same way, with Earth going dark and humanity disappearing behind a wall of jamming technology no empire could penetrate. Elias explained they chose to leave. They had learned enough. The galaxy wasn't ready. And now it might be. The data wasn't just historical. It was layered with markers, coded in symbols that only her biology could decipher. Her pupils dilated involuntarily. Her skin began absorbing light frequencies outside normal ranges. She could see data flowing across the room, live. Not just in numbers, but in context. Human memory protocols layered in sensory immersion. She didn't read the files. She relived them. She saw herself, or someone like her, standing on a battlefield of glass. Stars burning above, ruins beneath. She gave orders to a fleet of hybrids. Not human. Not alien. Something between. Elias stood beside her then, unchanged. In the vision, she called him something different. Not Elias. Commander Prime. The vision ended. Her heart rate returned to baseline faster than any trained soldier's. She looked at Elias without fear. You built me to awaken the rest. He nodded. Finally, she was asking the right question. The Empire hadn't just been monitored. It had been permitted. Allowed to grow, fight, conquer, and collapse within a sandbox. A galactic experiment to see whether any civilization could escape the primitive cycle of control and reaction. They hadn't. The Empire had only grown larger, never wiser. But what they didn't know was that at every strategic point in their hierarchy, humans had placed locked seed. People like her, born with functions they didn't understand. Genetic encryption keys. Buried guardians. She asked how many others there were like her. Enough, Elias said. But most are still asleep. He told her about Protocol Zero, humanity's last measure. A fail-safe network of distributed intelligence node. Each node required physical activation by a hybrid seed. When the network was complete, a message would be sent. Not to Earth. Earth was gone. To something older. Something beyond this galaxy. Her decision to awaken the moon vault had started the sequence. The message would ripple outward, activating dormant code buried in infrastructure even the Empire used unknowingly. In time, more would come. Some would join her. Others would try to kill her. And the Empire would panic. Not because of violence but because of loss of control. Their superiority was a myth built on forgotten truth. Humanity never lost. They just let the galaxy forget. A signal interrupted the moment. An Empire scout ship had arrived in the system. Not military but surveillance. Automated. The ship's AI pinged her vessel and initiated emergency recall protocols. Within seconds it detected anomalies. Within minutes it flagged her as compromised. Within hours the entire fleet would know she had defected. She asked if Elias could stop it. "I could," he said. "But I won't." He explained that the Empire's reaction was necessary. They needed to show their hand. The illusion of dominance had to break. Her survival would prove that their control was superficial, and her presence would ignite something far older than rebellion. She accessed her ship remotely, shut down its identification system, and activated a long-forbidden override. A command only she could execute. Her ship became invisible to Empire scans. The surveillance craft marked her signal as invalid and passed over. But the system still logged her presence. The timeline had begun. Elias led her to a final chamber. It was different. Not tactical. Not archival. But biological. Cloning bays lined the walls. But none were active. All empty. In the center, one pod glowed faintly. It contained a single preserved embryo. Human. Not mixed. Pure. He told her it was the last. The human species hadn't vanished, they had transcended. But they left a seed behind. A choice. This one child, unaltered, untouched by augmentation, was proof that they had never truly abandoned the galaxy. She asked why it hadn't been born yet. "Because we needed to know if the galaxy had learned," Elias answered. "And whether you would protect it." She stared at the pod. It pulsed slowly, alive but dreaming. She saw herself in its future, standing guard, not as a soldier but as a sentinel. A bridge between forgotten past and uncertain tomorrow. Then came the pulse. A wave of energy from a nearby sector. One of the remnant sites had activated. Not by her. By someone else. Another key had awakened. Elias smiled. "They're coming." Title: She traveled across the galaxy to find the human, and her reason will shock you. #HFY, #sci-fi stories, #faceless narration. The High Empress stood before the Council of Fire, her cloak torn, her golden armor dulled by dust and time, but her voice rang like a blade. She had returned not just with the truth, but with him. The human. The one who had undone their certainties and rewritten her destiny in silence. Every face in the chamber stared, not at her, but at the figure who walked calmly beside her, unarmed, unimpressed, and unmistakably human. The council didn't understand yet. Not really. They didn't understand that while they had debated, postured, and dismissed Earth as a primitive ruin, she had followed the dying signal of a vanished protector across dead stars and broken empires. What they called myth, she had found walking alone through the wastelands, carrying nothing but memory and fury. She didn't ask for permission. She never would again. She spoke of the forgotten world and the trial by sand and void. She told them of what happened in the ruins of Kratos V, where he stood against the synthetic Leviathan they had failed to defeat for decades. He hadn't fought it, he had spoken to it. It didn't listen. So he tore it apart with engineering, not weapons. With fury, not protocol. They had laughed at her quest. Called it romantic, naive, even treasonous. But they couldn't laugh now. Not after he'd walked into the council's chamber, scanned the throne protocol, and rewritten their security architecture in 60 seconds. No weapons. No threats. Just facts. Math. Proof. It was his way. He didn't give speeches. He made things work. He didn't conquer by force. He simply walked into problems and refused to let them stay broken. It wasn't magic. It was human. And she had nearly forgotten what that meant, until he reminded her on that frozen asteroid, patching a failing reactor while bleeding from shrapnel wounds he ignored. They had named him in the archives, Earth's last engineer commander. lost with the fall of Luna Base, presumed dead after the orbital incineration. But humans didn't die like others. Not really. They adapted. They rebuilt. They remembered everything, especially the ones who tried to erase them. She told the council how he had rescued a dying starship not by taking the helm, but by teaching its AI to want to live again. The vessel was now parked above the capital, singing. No one had ever heard a machine sing in their tongue. But it had learned from him. From his broken voice, humming while rebuilding a trans-warp drive with scavenged parts and raw logic. Some in the chamber still doubted. So she gave them evidence. Battle footage. Tech logs. The silence of extinct outposts where life bloomed again because he passed through. They tried to explain it as coincidence. She let them choke on their own arrogance. The Empress no longer needed their approval. She had something better. She had proof humanity wasn't extinct. Just waiting. And then the declaration came. Not from her, but from him. A soft voice, almost irritated, asking if the Empire intended to fix what it broke, or if it would just keep voting until it collapsed. The words were simple. The meaning wasn't. For a people obsessed with legacy, the implication was fatal. Humanity remembered. It didn't forgive. He wasn't a conqueror. He didn't need to be. But the Empire realized, too late, that he could be if they forced his hand. And the last time Earth had been forced, stars had gone dark and fleets had vanished without a trace. He hadn't threatened them. He just reminded them what history had forgotten. She stood beside him not as a ruler, but as a witness. Not his guide, but his student. Because when he'd saved her life, he hadn't asked who she was. He didn't care. She could have been a smuggler, a queen, or a ghost. He just helped because someone needed help. That was human. No ceremony. No calculation. Just choice. Now the Empire faced one. He didn't ask for titles or power. He offered something more terrifying. A plan. A path. A system they couldn't predict and couldn't manipulate. Built not on tradition, but on function. On result. And that terrified them. Because it worked. The old guard tried to stop him, of course. Accusations of infiltration, protocol breaches, sacrilege. He countered by removing a dozen critical network vulnerabilities they hadn't even known existed. One by one, the planet's defense grid began correcting itself. Not because he hacked it. Because it recognized something better. A logic more elegant than anything Imperial code had ever written. Human logic, flawed, adaptive, relentless. In the end, it wasn't her testimony that convinced them. It was the fact that their own systems began rewriting themselves to match his designs. Code was impartial. It chose survival. It chose function. And it chose him. Some whispered he was a ghost of war, a remnant of Earth's final vengeance. They were wrong. He was hope. Brutal, honest, inconvenient hope. And that's why she had searched the stars for him. Not to use him, not to crown him, but to remember who she once was before the Empire taught her to forget. She had thought the galaxy needed saving. But it was she who needed reminding. Of what leadership looked like. What integrity meant. Of how one man with a wrench and a conviction could outmaneuver dynasties built on fear. When the Empress stepped down, she wasn't exiled. She walked away. Chose silence. Chose learning. Chose him. Not because she had to. But because he never told her to. He just was. And that was enough. Together, they didn't raise armies. They rebuilt supply chains. Reprogrammed education satellite. Decentralized food network. People followed not out of loyalty, but because things worked. Peace didn't come from treaties. Came from clean water and open code. Even the outer colonies, once feral and lawless, began to echo his design. Not because he governed, but because he'd shown them how to repair instead of replace. How to understand before they judge. His influence wasn't loud. It was persistent. Unignorable. At the edges of known space, whispers of Earth returned, not as a threat but as a standard. Forgotten technologies reawakened. Systems once declared obsolete functioned better than imperial tech. No one understood why until they saw the engineer behind it. A man who refused to let anything stay broken, including people. She watched it unfold with quiet pride. She didn't need credit. He didn't want it. That was their alliance. One of purpose, not politics. Of change, not conquest. Others tried to copy his methods. Most failed. Because they didn't understand it wasn't about tools. It was about trust. He didn't make promises. He just showed up. And in a galaxy ruled by fear, that made him the most dangerous being alive. Not because he killed, but because he healed. Relentlessly. Without fanfare. Without apology. And now, when people across systems told their children stories of impossible machines and the Empress who vanished into myth, they also spoke of the man who rewired the stars. Not with weapons. With principles. She had crossed galaxies to find him. But in the end, he found her too, not as a sovereign, but as someone worth saving. And that changed everything. Not just for her. Not just for the Empire. For everyone.